Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know how this works. You send us the stuff you're reading, and we go through it with you and try to pull out some of the big ideas. And today we're going to be looking at multi-signature wallets. Sometimes you'll see it shortened to multi-sig wallets. And I know this is a topic that a lot of you have been interested in for good reason. We're seeing billions of dollars stolen in crypto because people's private keys are compromised. So it makes sense to really explore how we can make things more secure.
Yeah, anytime there's that single point of failure like a private key, it's really just asking for trouble. And multi-sig wallets are a pretty elegant way to try to solve that.
So before we get too far, can we just kind of like back up for a second? I think some people hearing this might be thinking like, wait a minute, what even is a private key? So can you just give us like the intro to multi-sig wallets?
Yeah, absolutely. So at its core, a multi-sig wallet just means that you need multiple cryptographic keys to approve any transaction.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So instead of having one key to rule them all, you'll have what's called an M of N signature scheme.
M of N, what is that?
So M is just like a number you decide on beforehand of how many signatures you need. And N is the total number of keys that are attached to the wallet.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's kind of like you know those movies where they have to have like two keys to launch the missile?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great analogy.
Okay.
Except instead of missiles, we're talking about, crypto assets.
Right.
And so what this M of N thing does is it really adds those layers of protection that a single key wallet just doesn't have. Like, let's say you have a 2 of 3 multisig wallet. That means you would have a key. Someone you trust would have a key. And then any transaction that goes out of that wallet would need at least 2 of those keys to sign off on it.
So even if one of those keys gets compromised, the funds are still safe.
Exactly. You got it. That's exactly right. The system distributes control and minimizes that risk of a single point of failure, whether it's theft or loss or even just human error.
Okay, this is really cool, but I always like to try to ground these things in reality. So are there any like real world examples of how multi-sig wallets are actually being used?
Yeah, for sure. So in the material you sent, there were a couple examples. One was Cashmere, which is a multi-sig platform that was built specifically for organizations on the Solana blockchain. And then there's another one called MPC Vaults, which offers a non-custodial solution across multiple chains.
Okay.
But what's interesting is this technology is being used in ways that benefit not just institutions, but like individuals as well. So for example, one of the platforms you sent was called OwnBit. And what OwnBit does is it has a built-in cold wallet feature.
Wait a minute. Did we say hot wallets before? I'm getting my terms mixed up here. Can we just pause for a second, like define what those are for anyone who might not know all the crypto lingo?
Yeah, for sure. It's easy to get caught up in all the jargon.
Uh,
So basically, a hot wallet is any wallet that's connected to the internet.
mm-hmm,
Think of your crypto wallet that's, on your phone or on your computer.
mm-hmm.
A cold wallet, on the other hand, is offline. It's like a super secure vault where you store your keys and it's totally disconnected from the internet.
So with OwnBit, you're getting the security of a cold wallet, but you don't have to buy like a separate physical device.
That's exactly right. It integrates that high level of security right into a multi-sig setup.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so let's get into the benefits. The article you sent lists like 5 key advantages of using multi-sig wallets. Can you kind of walk us through those?
Sure. So the most obvious one is the increased protection against attacks. Like we've been talking about, requiring multiple keys to authorize a transaction makes it way harder for hackers to gain control of your funds.
Okay, so that's like the big one. What else?
And then this also protects against single points of failure. So like let's say you lose your phone that has one of your keys on it, or one of the devices that has a key gets compromised. With multi-sig, your entire crypto fortune isn't just automatically lost. You still have those other keys as a backup,
Right.
so you have that peace of mind.
Especially in the crypto world where things can be a little volatile. That's a nice extra layer of reassurance.
Yeah, and then there's the mitigating the risk of private key theft or loss, which we've touched on.
Mm-hmm.
But even in that worst case scenario where one key is compromised, you still have a level of control and can take steps to minimize your losses.
Okay, so it's like damage control.
Exactly.
Built right in.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What about the other 2 benefits? It seems like those are more geared towards institutions rather than individuals.
Yeah, so the fourth one is enhanced control over fund management. And this is particularly relevant for businesses or organizations.
Okay.
Because by requiring multiple signatures for transactions, you're creating a system of checks and balances.
Yeah.
So no single individual can just make rogue decisions.
Right, like that could be a game changer for companies using crypto.
Exactly. And then that ties into the fifth benefit, which is reducing insider threats. So with Multisig, a single disgruntled employee can't just run off with the company's crypto. They would need to collude with others to get the required number of signatures.
So you're building trust and accountability right into the system.
That's the idea.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, and as we dive deeper, you'll see how that trust and accountability can play out in some pretty fascinating ways.
Okay, so we've got the basics down. We understand the benefits, but I'm also curious about the other side of the coin. Is it all sunshine and roses with multi-sig wallets, or are there challenges that we need to consider?
Well, as with any technology, there are always trade-offs.
Yeah.
Security often comes at the cost of convenience, and multi-sig wallets are no exception.
Okay, I'm ready for the but. What are some of the challenges that we should be thinking about?
So probably the most obvious one is speed. Gathering multiple signatures for each transaction can take a while, especially if the people who hold the keys are spread out geographically or if there's a need to make a decision quickly.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like you need to get approval from a committee for everything you do. Not super efficient.
Exactly. And then there's the question of legal recourse. So if there's a dispute, who's ultimately responsible? When you have ownership distributed amongst multiple key holders, it can get kind of tricky to navigate the legal side of things.
Yeah, that's a good point. These traditional financial systems have all these established legal frameworks, but this is kind of uncharted territory in a lot of ways. What else?
Well, recovering a multi-sig wallet can be a lot more complex than recovering a single key wallet,
Yeah.
because you need to make sure that all the parties involved have access to their recovery phrases.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the complexity of just the initial setup.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. It seems like configuring a multi-sig wallet would be a lot more complicated than just clicking create wallet on an app.
Yeah.
Plus, there's that potential for human error too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
With multiple people involved and more steps in the process,
Yeah.
the chances of making a mistake definitely go up.
Yeah.
Someone could misplace their key or forget the signing order or even accidentally sign a malicious transaction if they're not careful.
Okay, so we've covered the good, the bad, and the potentially ugly, but I'm really eager to dive into the specifics of how this technology is being used. So where are we seeing the most exciting applications of multi-sig wallets?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. We can talk about how crypto exchanges are using multisig to secure billions of dollars in user funds. And we can look at how businesses are starting to incorporate this tech into their everyday operations.
That sounds like a great place to pick up after a short break. We'll be right back to explore the real-world applications of multi-sig wallets and what they could mean for the future of finance. So don't go anywhere. Welcome back. So before the break, we were just about to get into how multi-sig wallets are being used in the real world. And you mentioned crypto exchanges, those platforms where we can buy and sell and trade cryptocurrencies. I imagine they have like the most to lose if their security is breached.
Yeah, absolutely. Exchanges are a prime target for hackers just because of the sheer volume of cryptocurrency that they handle. So implementing multi-sig wallets is like a key part of their strategy to protect their own assets, but also importantly, the funds that users have entrusted to them.
So it's not just about protecting their own bottom line, it's also about maintaining trust with their users.
Exactly.
So can you tell me a little bit more about like the specifics of how exchanges are using multi-sig wallets?
Yeah, so they're using them for both hot and cold storage. Remember we talked about those terms?
Right.
So hot wallets are the ones that are connected to the internet. They're used to facilitate day-to-day transactions. So implementing multi-sig for those hot wallets adds a significant layer of security. Imagine a scenario where a hacker gains access to one of the keys. They still wouldn't be able to move the funds without the required additional signatures.
So it's like multiple security checkpoints at different points of entry.
Exactly. And then for cold storage, which is all about keeping the bulk of the crypto assets offline, away from the vulnerabilities of the internet.
Like the ultimate safe room.
Exactly. Exchanges typically employ a multi-sig setup where different individuals or even different teams control the keys to these offline wallets. So to actually access the funds, these key holders would need to physically come together and use their keys to authorize any transaction.
Wow. So it's not just digital security, it's like physical security too. It's like a spy movie or something.
Yeah, for sure.
But it really shows like how seriously they take the safeguarding of those assets.
Absolutely. It's a strong deterrent against, both external threats, but also even potential internal bad actors. Speaking of which, how do you think businesses beyond just exchanges could benefit from this type of setup?
Well, I'm thinking about all those stories you hear about, companies losing millions of dollars to a rogue employee or a sophisticated phishing scam. It seems like multi-sig could be a pretty good defense against that kind of thing.
You're exactly right. Imagine a company that's managing its crypto treasury, or handling large transactions. They could set up a multi-sig wallet where different executives or department heads hold the keys. So no single person would have the ability to just make a decision unilaterally.
It's like the old saying, two heads are better than one, but like amped up for the digital age.
Yeah, and it introduces checks and balances, so no one person can just make a reckless move that impacts the whole company.
Right. And this model isn't just limited to like traditional businesses either, right?
Right.
Like I'm thinking about decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs. They often use multi-sig wallets as well.
Exactly. They use them to manage their treasuries and to make decisions in a transparent and collective manner.
DAOs are so interesting to me. It's like an organization run by code and governed by its members. It seems like multi-sig wallets are like perfectly suited for that kind of decentralized structure.
Totally. They embody the principles of decentralization, transparency, and community governance that are fundamental to how a lot of DAOs think about things.
Okay, so we've talked about exchanges, businesses, even these kind of futuristic DAOs. But what about everyday individuals? Where does multi-sig fit into their lives? Is it just for these big institutions?
Not at all. Think about all the stories we hear about people losing their life savings in crypto because they lost their private keys or fell for a phishing scam. Multi-sig wallets can be a game changer for individuals who are just trying to protect their own assets.
Yeah, that added security would definitely give me some peace of mind.
For sure.
So can you give me an example of how an individual might use a multi-sig wallet in their personal life?
Sure. So let's say you have, a significant amount of crypto that you're holding and you really want to protect it. You could set up a multi-sig wallet and then distribute the keys across different devices, like your phone, your computer, maybe even a hardware wallet.
So even if one device is lost or compromised, the funds are still safe.
Exactly. Or you could even involve, trusted family members or friends, and each of you could hold a key. So that way any transaction would require multiple people to approve it.
Interesting. So it's like an added layer of security, but also like shared responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
That could be really useful for families or business partners who want to manage assets together.
Right. And you remember we talked about inheritance planning earlier.
Yeah.
Multi-sig wallets can be used for that too. So you could imagine if you wanted to ensure that your loved ones would have access to your crypto after you're gone, you could set them up as key holders and create almost like a digital will, but with added security and control.
That's a really powerful application.
Yeah,
Provides a lot of peace of mind.
definitely. So we've seen how multi-sig can benefit exchanges, companies, DAOs, and individuals. It seems like this technology is really gaining traction across the board.
And for good reason.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It offers a level of security and flexibility that just isn't possible with those traditional single key wallets. But before we get too carried away with all the excitement, it's important to come back to those challenges that we talked about earlier. Because, there are some trade-offs to consider, especially when it comes to convenience and ease of use.
You're right. We want to stay grounded here. So what are some of the biggest challenges that people should keep in mind before they kind of jump headfirst into the world of multi-sig wallets?
Well, remember we were talking about speed earlier.
Right. We were talking about speed being one of the potential drawbacks with multi-sig wallets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So gathering those multiple signatures for every transaction, it can be a pretty slow process, especially if you got people you need to coordinate with. Maybe they're in different time zones and things like that. It can be a real drawback if you need to make a decision quickly or if you're, doing some rapid fire trading.
Yeah, it makes sense. You don't want to have to go through a whole committee every time you need to move some funds around.
Exactly. And then beyond just the speed, there's also the complexity factor.
Mm.
Setting up and managing a multi-sig wallet can be a lot more challenging than using a regular single key wallet. It requires a bit more of a, technical understanding.
Mm.
Especially when you're coordinating with multiple people.
Yeah, I can imagine there's a learning curve there.
Yeah.
And, for people who aren't super tech savvy, it could feel a bit intimidating.
For sure. And with more complexity comes more room for human error, right?
Oh, absolutely. With multiple keys and all these different processes, the chances of someone making a mistake, they definitely go up. Like you said, someone could misplace their key or forget the signing order or even accidentally approve, a malicious transaction if they're not really, really careful.
Exactly. So, it really emphasizes the need for education and awareness when you're using these multi-sig wallets.
Right.
People need to understand not just the technology itself, but also the best practices for security and for managing their keys.
It's not just a set it and forget it kind of solution.
Right. You need to be diligent and proactive about security. But, even with those challenges, I think the potential benefits of multi-sig wallets, they outweigh the drawbacks,
Mm.
especially as we move toward this more, decentralized future.
That's a great point. And it actually leads perfectly into my next question. So now that we have a good understanding of how they work and the pros and the cons, I'd love to get your take on kind of the bigger picture implications of this technology. Where do you see this going in the grand scheme of things?
What's really fascinating to me is that multi-sig wallets aren't just a security upgrade. They're almost like a fundamental shift in how we think about control and trust in a digital environment. As we move away from these centralized institutions and toward these more decentralized models like DAOs, this technology becomes even more crucial.
So it's not just about protecting our assets, it's about rethinking how we actually manage and govern them.
Exactly. Imagine a future where decentralized communities are managing everything from investment funds to social initiatives using multi-sig wallets. Where transparency and accountability are built in every step of the way. It's a pretty powerful vision.
It's like we're watching the birth of a new kind of digital democracy where power isn't concentrated in the hands of a few, but it's distributed among the community.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And, multi-sig wallets are really an important tool for enabling that kind of transition. They empower us to collaborate, to make decisions collectively, and to build trust in this decentralized world.
It's pretty groundbreaking. And as we wrap up here, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. So we've seen how multi-sig wallets can enhance security, they can transform organizations, and even reshape how we think about governance.
It's been quite a deep dive.
It really has. We've gone from the basics all the way to some pretty profound implications. So to everyone listening out there, as you continue to explore the world of blockchain and crypto, just remember knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Keep learning, keep asking questions, and never stop being curious.
And who knows, you might just stumble upon the next big innovation that revolutionizes how we all interact and transact in this digital world.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and as always, stay curious out there.